Welcome to a live edition of the Deep Look podcast. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, joined by Keith Raynor. Normally, Keith, we get to do this live and in person, but it's not going to happen this time because we are not yet together. You're not in Milwaukee yet, and I am in Milwaukee after the D3 championships. So we'll have to make do doing it as we usually do, remotely.
I don't know what's usual anymore. Does anyone even know what's usual anymore? I don't know how many. What is this? We've probably done like 4 of these as live shows or something like that. I do miss the days of being like in the house in the thick of things. It used to when we first started, it would be like, people were literally arriving for the tournament behind us. So you had kind of like a menagerie of voices behind you, and it was kind of a cool environment. But we're maybe a little more buttoned up now. I don't know.
So we've got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to preview the D1 College Championships, but I wanted to start, Keith, with a quick discussion of what happened at D3. Oklahoma Christian in the men's division and Middlebury in the women's division, both going back-to-back and winning after they won in December at the 2021 championships. Some very exciting games this weekend. I hope you got a chance to tune in and watch live a little bit, Keith. And tons of games already up for subscribers as well. You can catch all of the semifinals online, as well as, of course, the finals available on the Ulti World and USA Ultimate YouTube channels. Are you surprised at all about these teams repeating this year?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I think these were clearly favorites in both their divisions. I think that Oklahoma Christian probably a thin favorite or neck and neck, whatever, however you want to handicap it. Very close with some of their potential opposition, but they were the reigning champions with a Player of the Year candidate and a strong cast. I think there were high expectations for them even after what happened at regionals. And Middlebury in the women's division, I mean, they were the clear favorites. And in fact, I think they were more challenged than we anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wellesley put up a game on them. Like that the final was contested for about definitely the first half, and I would say maybe the first 60% of the game. And I think finally Middlebury's depth started to chip away, as well as like a slightly higher top end. Having the best player on the field is very beneficial. Claire Babbitt-Bryan was, as advertised, tremendous. But Wellesley, I mean, what a run they went on to get to the final and then, give Middlebury trouble. Like, it looked at times like they might have a chance to win that game.
The Wellesley went dry, could you say?
Don't say that. That's awful.
Look, let me eat the crow though. I mean, I was a Wellesley doubter, and they certainly proved me wrong. They were on the brink in semifinals of what still would have been a strong run. Making it to semifinals, pretty impressive, even if it's more or less holding seed. Pretty impressive stuff for a team that wasn't at nationals in 2021 and hasn't necessarily been a dominant team in the division or anything like that. But they had the incredible comeback. I mean, to me, that was like the defining moment of the weekend, was coming back from 13-10 with a 4-0 run, minus their star player. I mean, it just incredible stuff. They come back, they win the semifinal, get the upset, and then they're going toe-to-toe with this juggernaut, Middlebury. I mean, they were a really fun underdog to root for, but just eventually overpowered by what is just far and away to me the most talented team.
Well, so Oklahoma Christian has been the subject of much discussion over the last few days, with a lot of people a little upset about some of the foul calls, some of the contests on calls. We already have a comment in the chat about it, but I mean, it's been a big conversation online about kind of like, whether this team was, villainous. I called the final. I was lucky enough to do play-by-play on the final with OC taking on St. Olaf. And I have to say, as competitive a game as that was, and as hard-fought as a national final is always going to be, I thought they played well within the bounds of a normal competition. And I have to say, I guess I'm a little surprised at the overall level of anger that seems to be directed towards Oklahoma Christian for some calls. Now, look, I get it. Some teams are going to be a little bit more prone to making calls than other teams, but I feel like there's more to it than this, and I can't quite figure it out if people are upset because or I don't know, stealing championships by having this scholarship program or what it is. But I feel like watching East, this was a team that, played more calls than an average team, but nothing outside of the realm of normal ultimate. I think if there's anger to be directed somewhere, I think you have to set with the observers for making bad calls.
And the discourse around this has evolved somewhat, but to me, there's a couple things at play. One, if you win back-to-back title, you're going to be the villain. I mean, that's just how
Right.
it is. No one's won back-to-back titles in Ultimate or probably any sport and been beloved for doing it. It's just not how it works. You're going to be the villain. I mean, look at what's happening to UNC. I mean, they have I talked about this on the show, but they have every reason to be the golden child of Ultimate. I mean, they did it from the ground up, right? Everyone should be thrilled about them putting out a model that anyone can follow more or less. But they're going to be the villains, right? Everybody's going to be rude. No one wants to watch them win again. It's not interesting. They're already the favorites. I think a lot of that can be said for OC. And then, once you're within that logic, then you can find different pieces of evidence to use in your case and just kind of attach yourself to those. So whether it's the scholarships, whether it's the mercenary vibe or whatnot, you can find your reasons for disliking them. And when I put out that Twitter thread that we've gone over also on the show, where it was just kind of like things we should stop doing in 2022. And one of them is not realizing the difference between sports hating someone and like actually disliking them. And I think a lot of people probably just sports hate OC, and that's okay. Sports hating is like a natural part of sport, as long as you can draw the distinction between attacking the character of a person. And I think some people have lost sight of that. I think that there's been some attacks on the character of OC, and some of the calls were perhaps a little bit dubious. I mean, I think there was a pattern that evolved.
There were
over
some
the course
bad
of the
calls
weekend.
in the Middlebury semifinal.
But
There's no doubt.
Didn't they finish like second in Spirit Score? I think
They
someone
did
on
finish
OC
second
said
in
that.
Spirit Score.
So like, how much can you really complain? I know the Spirit Scoring system was flawed, but usually it's going to show if a team has been just taking complete advantage of everybody with bad calls. Like that's usually going to be reflected in the Spirit Scores in the other direction. I mean, they're going to be pretty strong. So, I do think there's some reasons to push back against some of the OC criticism for being willing to help get people to play Ultimate that otherwise might not be in the room together. I mean, when other teams form super teams, like it happens all the time in Ultimate. I don't see why this school can't be a part of that. I know there's various reasons people have decided to take issue with OC. Some a little more legit than others, but I think people are getting a little aggressive about painting with a broad brush here.
Classic.
Yeah, not that we would ever do that.
I just want to let everybody know we are live. We're on YouTube right now. You can ask us any questions that you want. We do have a mode, which, you know what? I think this is the secret to stopping the spam. No more spam. Subscribers only. All you have to do to chat is just subscribe to the channel. You don't have to wait. There's no lockout period or anything like that. So just subscribe and you can chat. Mags Colvette in the chat asks, is Ultimate especially bad at separating sports villainy from real villainy because bad spirit is such a handy attack on whoever's annoying you right now? Keith, I'll let you tackle it.
I think that's part of it. I do think Ultimate's bad at it, but mostly because everybody knows each other. So, like, if you have a sports villain, chances are that you're like 2 degrees of separation away from them. So it like actually feels a little personal for that person to be attacking you in a way
Right.
that it doesn't if I'm, out here slandering Sabrina Ionescu. Like if I'm going at her, she doesn't know who I am from Adam. So like she doesn't really care that much. Not that we shouldn't be thoughtful when we're attacking public figures, but it's a little bit different in Ultimate, I think, in large part because of the closeness. But you're right that the spirit of the game relationship does, create an environment where there's like a built-in way to vilify somebody.
Right. I mean, overall, I thought it was a very fun tournament. I thought we had some great individual play. I thought we had some great, and it's still deep. The level is definitely not at D1. I think, you have the age-old question: could the winning team win a game at D1? maybe I think Milwaukee's got a shot. I don't know if OC would win a game. Maybe they could beat UConn, but that's probably it. But you know what? I don't think you need to compare the divisions necessarily in order to enjoy the competition. I think you got to shout out Oklahoma Christian because not only did they repeat, but it's not like they just brought the same team back. I think Middlebury, for the most part, brought the same team. But OC loses the player that was the linchpin for them in 2021 in Kyle Henke. And they overhauled the offense without him there. I mean, and it definitely felt at times in December that it was just like, well, we don't know what to do. So Kyle, and he's going to do something awesome. And it worked. But this time around, they had a more dynamic offense, I thought, and they ran through more players. Elliot Moore was great. And I was very impressed, particularly Daniel Kamari, who played some excellent defense, was a plus offensive player, and is going to be around this team for a couple more seasons. And I think it's very cool to see the scholarship program bringing somebody from Kenya to play on this team that would never otherwise probably be playing American College Ultimate. Cool to see a very diverse program having success at the highest level. It's not just about the players that they brought in, those quote-unquote hired guns. A cool story, in my opinion.
I do think, I can't hide from the fact that I think it's a bit rich for, a primarily white and upper middle class, if not even wealthier group of people to be criticizing OC for helping pay the way of students who are playing. I mean, a lot of the private universities that they're competing against have extremely high tuitions. It's like,
I think somebody looked it up. St. Olave's tuition is like $65,000 a semester or something.
Yeah, so it's a little rich to be like, oh, you have an unfair advantage. Whatever. They went out there on the field and won the game. And I think Costello and Kamari and Moore obviously were very important in their previous title run. And Henke leaving created some more room for those players to breathe in a sense. So Kamari, maybe his role didn't necessarily change that much as kind of the key to the defense. But be very curious what happens with this OC program as time goes on, how it develops. Will we see perhaps them try and replicate this in the women's division? Will other schools try and replicate this? Like, is the school getting something good out of it? Is all this positive press is dominating the Division III ultimate scene something that the school's going to feel like worthwhile? Could we see them try and go D1? Like, I have no idea what to expect from this story.
You can catch up with all of our Division III college championships coverage on the website, ultiworld.com. So let's turn our attention to Division I, and we are just days away from the start of the event. We are 3 days away from the opening pool play, and as always, going to be a blast. I guess, Keith, we didn't talk about the seeding last show, right?
We didn't. I don't think we definitely talked about it.
Maybe just
I don't know if we talked about it on air.
Yeah, I don't. We need to get on it. I think what I'll say is that predicted seedings. It was very close to the predictions this year. A couple of switches here and there. Colorado getting seeded ahead of Carleton after beating them later in the season. And a couple of switches, oftentimes feeling like maybe for regional rematch purposes. And for the most part, though, this was very much like what you would see, the seeding-wise, as in a normal year. I think the big difference is that the regional rule was back in place this year. That teams that finish behind another team at regionals have to be seated behind them at nationals. And Keith's throwing the thumbs down. I mean, in a year with no rankings, although in my mind, they use the rankings, Keith, because if you look at the seeding, it follows the rankings. You kind of have to do that. But what it means is that you have some teams, like notably Washington men's, who get upset at regionals and then get put into the 4 seed in a pool, and everyone's like, oh, God, now I have pool of death. And so that's something to keep an eye out for here this weekend. So thoughts, Keith, on the seeding, and then we can start to dive into the pools and start to break this tournament down.
Washington men's lost a single game. just the one on their USAU record, and they're now 4 seed. But you know what? Make them go prove it. They also almost missed nationals, so I'm there. We're going to talk about them, whether it's in the pool preview or whenever we talk about the game. They're going to be coming up. I don't have too much on the seeding. I mean, you look at North Carolina being the 3 seed in the men's division, and you understand how they got there, but it is almost odd to see. And Colorado being the 2 seed after last nationals, in Pittsburgh as well being a 1 seed in their pool, the 4 seed in Pool D. It's all intriguing after the way that the 2021 college championships shook out, and not really any surprises in the women's division. I wouldn't say. It's lovely though, see the Metro East not in the bottom rung, sitting at 16. SUNY Binghamton, you love to see it, but. Otherwise, I don't think this is a particularly spicy seeding year, and in part because I do think that we've got a pretty good handle on how they do seeding, so it's losing some of its luster, I would say, but maybe that's for the benefit. I'm still holding out for us to do a draw style though. Can we get the teams bucketed and we just draw them out? I think that'd be a lot more fun.
I think that could be fun. It was fun doing that for the World Games when we had Brian Gissel on to the pool draw. Obviously a much smaller event, but still fun. But let's take a look at the top seed tournament in the women. North Carolina, Colorado, Carleton, UCSB are your 1 seeds. Washington, UBC, Tufts, Stanford, the 2 seeds. Going snake there, back DC. In the men's side, Brown, of course, the number 1. Incredible season. Colorado 2, North Carolina the 3, Pittsburgh the 4. And 2021 finalist Georgia will have to face off against Pittsburgh in a very exciting matchup in Pool D as the 5 seed. Vermont is the 6, NC State the Poly Slow the 8. So Keith, just go pool by pool here and start to take a look at some of these matchups, what stands out to you. And of course, later on in the show, we're going to get to our picks as is tradition. Keith, where do you want to start?
Let's start in the women's division, and just quickly addressing the chat. Simone P asked about the best pool play matchups to watch at D1. We'll try and come up with some as we go through these pools. We'll target the games that we think will be particularly exciting. Also, shout out to Matt Kearney, the UConn men's team's coach, who is in the chat and will not accept your slander of UConn.
So, all right, cool. Pool A, Keith, women's division. Here it is. North Carolina, Stanford, Georgia, FSU, and Northeastern. Georgia, a very interesting 3 seed, number 12 overall. And I know what their season was like, but I got to say, Keith, I think this is a two seed quality team. I think they have a very good realistic chance of beating Stanford, depending on wind conditions. No one's going to beat UNC in this pool, but I think that the pre-quarter spots are at least somewhat interesting because, FSU, Northeastern, actually, I don't actually think it's that interesting. I think this pool is going to be mostly about who finishes in second. I think Georgia has a real chance to beat Stanford. I think they're much better than a 12 seed suggests.
This pool is surprisingly interesting to me. I feel like a broken record when we talk about these pools because they're always shaped the same way, which is another reason to do the freaking draw. But, 8, 12, 13, 17 is pretty close together, especially 8, 12, 13. So I always feel like those groups can arrange in any sort of way. And all you ask is the questions about North Carolina. And for North Carolina, I don't know if this is a draw that they really like. I think Stanford is a particularly dangerous team if you're not familiar with them because they're so well coached. They have a clear identity when they play. And so we've seen them make some runs on teams before. And Georgia is the team that pushed UNC as tough as anybody in 2021.
That is true.
Not really an ideal draw. I think Florida State's kind of a scary 4 seed. I mean, they lost 1 game all season, and it was to Georgia. They beat a bunch of the teams in the field here. Now, they had one really good tournament. It was the only particularly good tournament that they went to, so they won the games in front of them, but they're a little untested. I think that's what makes Pool A so interesting, is that it feels like all the teams below North Carolina have kind of a pretty big gap between the ceiling and the floor. I could literally see Stanford losing all of their games in pool play, and I could also see them winning this pool. I could see a world in which they beat UNC. So I don't know if I necessarily see that ceiling for Georgia and Florida State and Northeastern, but I do see teams that could get into quarterfinals. I think this is a very intriguing pool because these teams have not necessarily been consistent, and so the results could really go a lot of different directions. This is a very difficult pool for me to project.
I will say this about Florida State. This is a very similar team. I mean, basically the same team that we saw in the fall. Now, they went 0-4 in pool play, but they were a live 5 seed, okay? They lost by 3 to Vermont, and they lost by 1 to both UCSD and Chicago. Now, 0-4 in pool play is 0-4 in pool play, but it could have gone a lot differently, and, UCSD is a great team. Playing within 3 of Vermont is a good result, and they've had another 6 months of playing together. So you're not wrong. That's a tough 4 seed draw. I don't think it's enough to beat UNC. I don't think any of these teams have enough to beat UNC. I hear what you're telling me about Stanford. Against other teams, yes, I agree with you, but not against UNC. The team's too good. They're too good. They're too deep. They're too talented. There's just no way that Stanford's going to have an answer. Even if UNC has a tough time with the Stanford defense, they're just too athletic. They're going to outmatch Stanford at like most positions in matchup. I don't really see how it's possible for Stanford to get a win over a team of this caliber. It's one thing if Stanford won the Southwest, but that didn't happen.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, this is the advantage of the 1 seed, right? Is in theory, you're supposed to get a good draw out of the deal, and that plays into the bracket. North Carolina certainly earned the spot, but this is a very intriguing pool to me along those lines.
Let's go to Pool B. Here it is. Colorado, the 1 seed, Tufts, the 2, UC Davis, Pittsburgh, and Purdue. So last time we saw Colorado, they were looking very sharp at the Northwest Challenge. They end up getting the 2 seed overall because of their win over Carleton. And, Tufts is a very good team, but I do think this feels like a very winnable pool for Colorado. It really feels to me like they have the one test against Tufts. Pittsburgh and Purdue particularly don't feel like they're as threatening of a pair of teams as, for example, Florida State and Northeastern in Pool A.
I agree with that. I do think it's interesting. What is this? 4 regional champions in one pool.
Yes, which you don't often see that.
You don't. I wonder how many times we've had 5 teams that won their region in the same pool. Anyway, Tufts gave Colorado a good game the one time that they played 9-7. So sounds like a wind affected game. And Tufts, when they're playing well, I think is as good as pretty much any of these 2 seeds. But I agree with you. I've been hard on Davis all year. I had high expectations for them, and I feel the same way about Pittsburgh. But I did in 2021 as well. So I cannot stump for this Pittsburgh team any longer. I got to put them in the prove it zone. Like I just can't stump for them unless they go out there and do the work on the field. I love the talent on both Davis and Pittsburgh, but we just haven't seen the results to back it up. So I got to feel pretty good about the top seeds in this pool. And if one of these teams gets hot, they maybe could do some work in the bracket. Shout out to Purdue. We have exchanged our blows on Twitter. We were doubters here at Deep Look. So I can't just throw them out and completely discredit them. They went out and won the Great Lakes. I expected they're going to be a really athletic and energetic team, but it's difficult to show up to your first nationals really without a lot of elite club experience to lean on. I mean, it's a big ask, and this is not a team that's had a really standout season. So I have trouble envisioning a lot of upsets for them, but I do think they're not going to go quietly.
Do you think what's the game, Keith?
Colorado -2, 2.5.
I honestly think I want to upset 2.
I mean, yeah, they beat them by 2
be a very competitive game.
I think you're really high on Colorado. I think you believe that the Colorado that we saw at Northwest Challenge is who that team is, and I'm a little more. That might be the high end. Like that's what you get when they're playing their best. And I don't know that we've seen them handle not playing well. I feel like they don't win a lot when they're not playing their best, and that makes me nervous because that's not where you want to be as a 2 seed. But they're going to get a nice test out of Tufts, and I think that'll help prepare them for whatever lies ahead in the bracket. But obviously, you're going to want to get the bye in the quarterfinals. I mean, it's going to be a big game. If you're if Simone's looking for a game to watch, I think that Tufts Colorado game is perhaps one of the sneaky, most interesting games in this pool.
They played in consolation at Stanford Invite, 9-7 win for Colorado.
Right.
So, but Colorado did not play nearly as well at Stanford Invite as they did once they had Stacey Gaskell back in the fold at Northwest Challenge. I still, well, we'll get to the picks later on. Pool C. Here we go. Carleton, UBC, UC San Diego, Virginia, and Colorado State. Fascinating top three in this pool. And as good as Carleton is, I truly think that we could see all those teams go 2-1 against each other, like in the trio or whatever, 1-2. And that's going to be a battle between those three teams because UCSD is such a dangerous team, underseeded as a 3 seed. They phoned it in once they got into nationals. Ava Hanna took herself out because she's dealing with a lingering injury. Perhaps that's reason to be concerned. UCSD is not a deep team particularly, but they're so good at the top end. You have to have an answer for Hanna. No one's really had that answer. I think that they're capable of beating UBC. Can't wait for this pool.
Dan Youngster in the chat saying that Pool C is the pool of death, which very well maybe. I mean, UC San Diego is a terrifying team to see as a 3 seed. Now, they are 0-2 against Carleton this season. Carleton, in fact, has lost to UBC. So there's some drama to be had here. These teams are going to have familiarity with each other. But, man, it's just going to be so important how healthy Ava Hanna is.
That's true.
She takes on such a big role for UC San Diego, and they're going to need her heroics to get past teams of this quality. There are not going to be a lot of layups to be had in this pool. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about how they're so deep. No, they're not. They're just not. They don't have a large team. They don't have a super deep bench. And Ava Hanna is probably the best player in college ultimate right now for this season. And yes, like their fortunes will lie in how she plays. Simple as that.
I agree. Her role on their team is just too big on both sides of the disc. They don't have a thrower to replace her. They don't have a defender to replace what she does, particularly when they're running zone. So she is like a defining person in this. Maybe is like the most important person in the field. Like individually, like it's hard to say. I mean, maybe you put that on Marie Pervier. I don't know, but in the women's division,
yeah.
What more can you say?
Yeah. Well, so Carleton beat UCSD 12-10 in the Stanford Invite Final. Very good game, competitive game. Then they beat them again later. West John 15-10. I really look at that Stanford Invite Final as more of kind of the bellwether game. Carleton's the favorite, no question. I think Carleton is probably going to win this pool, but I do think that those 3 teams are all capable of beating each other. And there's not a lot of 3 seeds that are going to have a shot against the 1 seed in their pool. But I think it's realistic that UCSD could get a win against a team as good as Syzygy.
I'm looking now at the schedule to see like how these 3 teams line up with each other.
Yep.
Carleton gets UC San Diego in their last game on Saturday. And in the round prior, or 2 rounds prior, UC San Diego and UBC play. Carleton and UBC play on Friday.
Carleton's first game of the tournament is against UBC after UBC gets kind of that warm-up game against Virginia earlier in the day. Great spot for UBC. I think it's an advantage to be playing game 2 versus an opponent that's playing game 1. Say all you want about fatigue. I don't really think that's a factor on day 1 of the tournament, especially after the long break you get from game 1 to game 2. I think there tends to be jitters in game 1. Most teams have jitters. UBC has to feel good about that scheduling for them because they're going to get a shot at Carleton when they're in that game 1 zone.
Oh, it's so familiar, Charlie, that feeling of being at the college championships and the first half of the first round you start getting in all these weird scores, teams that are really good playing really close with teams that aren't necessarily that good,
Yep.
upset alerts and stuff like that. And then the second half, things just tend to even out. But you're right. I think teams tend to start really flat. So I like this draw for UBC. Plus, they get to sit back and watch Carleton and UC San Diego duke it out without having to worry about what they need to do in order to position themselves. They just play their games, be done at 10:30. They'll play Colorado State at 2:30 in that final round, but I don't think they're going to be too worried about that matchup. So the focus is just going to be on the top of this pool.
Gonna be fun.
Making these picks is going to be very difficult.
Let's go to Pool D. UC Santa Barbara, Washington, Vermont, SUNY Binghamton, and William and Mary. Now, UCSB Washington, I mean, as is typical, the 4-5 game is one of the best of the tournament. That's going to be a classic. Does Vermont have what it takes to challenge either of those teams, Keith? That is the huge question mark for me in Pool D.
Absolutely, they do. I don't have. It's not really a question to me. I mean, this is a team that went double game point with UNC and Washington. Did they get the win? No. But if you can go toe to toe with UNC, and that was an honest to goodness game, then you've got the goods. I am through questioning Vermont's ability to be an elite team. Deep in the bracket, yeah, I'll be worried. If they get to semifinals, which I think is a potential outcome for them, then I'll be worried about the lack of big game experience as a group. But they're a damn good team, and 9 is a disservice to them on talent. There's no way that I would say they are the 9th most likely team to win a national title or the 9th most talented team in this field. Absolutely.
I mean, they get pushed down a little bit by the loss to Tufts at regionals.
Exactly.
Now let's look at the score.
To me.
8-4 was the score of that game, the final. They lose to Tufts. Okay, understand this. The tournament was extremely windy. Mm-hmm. Extremely windy. Throw it out. I don't care about that.
And it's
what happened
in
in Northwest Challenge.
There is no both of those teams were locked into nationals at that point. That was purely a seeding game.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, I take the result. It makes me feel like, okay, Tufts, that's a nice result for them. But I don't think it tells me much about this Vermont team. I still think Washington's the class of this pool. UCSB, I've been a little bit skeptical overall of the West Coast teams, the California teams, for much of the season. Maybe I shouldn't be. They've proved it. They've had a lot of good wins. I would not be shocked if we saw the entire Southwest region underperform a little bit where their seeds are at. I like Washington to win this pool. I think that Vermont has a very good chance to finish second, beating UCSB and pushing UCSB into that difficult 3 spot for the pre-quarter.
Being pointed out to me now that Vermont also beat Washington at Northwest Challenge, so they split with them, and their loss came by 1. So Washington's been a team I've been really curious about. I feel like they're going with a we're just gonna flip it on a nationals strategy. Like they ran pretty open lines. I don't feel like they were really getting us, like they were taking time to develop their roles and build up the whole roster, and that could certainly pay off. They just went through nationals. I imagine they learned a lot from that experience of going to the final in 2021. So that's got to be informing their strategy here. But I get a little nervous when teams are like, okay, we'll just flip on the switch and we'll really tighten up lines and we'll really see what our personnel can do at the last moment. They're going to get a ton of tests in pool play. They're going to have to lose a couple times in order to get knocked out or anything like that. But they're going to get really tested. And I think Vermont very much can win this pool. And I'm with you that I'm a little skeptical of UCSB, although that's not really fair to how they played this year. It's just,
no.
I just don't know if I can buy, and I really like Vermont and Washington.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I think that's the bigger thing is that they have tough. Yeah, I mean, UCSD at they did dominate at the championship again. From that game in, I mean, they played 13-12 with Davis. They do have the win over Washington at Stanford Invite, but I mean, I think it's true. Here's the thing: Washington had the to play the tight rotations. The playing the vast majority 4 months ago. So then you take the time to developing the roster. I don't think it's like one of those situations we they have. Like, oh, they're just going to turn it on. They're just going to turn it on. Sometimes you see a team be able to turn it on, but we saw them turn it on. We saw them beat Carleton in the semifinal. We saw them prove that, and then they went out and including beating UBC twice comfortably. I hear you. I don't know the title, but I think they're in this pool.
They're dangerous. They're very dangerous. I don't think anybody is sleeping on them. That's for sure. I mean, they may have the best player in the country on their team. This is a team that we all know has the ability to win a title. If there's anybody out there who wants to raise their hand and say, I don't think Washington Element could win a title, then go ahead and put yourself up there so that we can all laugh at you.
Cody Mills said skeptic women in the fall, and they put 3 teams in quarters.
I don't think we're arguing that they can't put 3 teams in quarters. But we're talking about teams that could make semis and win titles here. Would it surprise you if three Southwest teams are in quarters right now? I don't think so.
I mean, I think you look at the quarters, depends on how things shake out. You could have some Southwest teams facing off in pre-quarters. I don't know. It's gonna be fascinating. Like, how does UC pool? Like, if they get that's gonna be a good sign for the Southwest. We're gonna the women's division for a little bit later on when we do it. So let's move on to the men's division, and we'll begin with Pool A. Before we move on, Keith, what are your top 3 games to watch in pool play in the women's division?
Top 3 games. I mean, I could basically just sit in Pool D. You know, like Pool D and Pool C are the place to be. I feel like. I know I talked about Colorado Tufts, North Carolina Stanford. Those are all interesting, but like I gotta see how these Pool D matchups shake out. Probably first and foremost, and then I think I gotta say UCSD Carleton. So the matchups between Washington UCSB, Washington Vermont. And Vermont UCSB, and then UCSD Carleton. I know that's 4, but I feel like I get a package deal with those Pool D games.
I'm getting reports that I'm having poor internet issues right now. Keith, are you hearing me okay?
I hear you great. You sound wonderful.
Interesting.
It's like music to my ears.
Well, hopefully it resolves itself. Let me know in the chat if you're having continuing issues with my sound and or video. I am definitely dealing with not the best internet at the house here, which is it's not a positive sign to have bad internet already with a lot of people coming into town. Luckily, this Airbnb will not be our primary location for the championships, but keep me posted in the chat if you're having trouble hearing me. Okay, so let's move to the men's division. And in the men's division, here are your pools. We'll start with Pool A, and it is number 1 overall seed Brown, Cal Poly SLO, Texas, Utah State, and William and Mary. I think this pool is a lot of fun. I think that as the draw goes for Brown, this is not ideal. I mean, Keith, you said the same thing about UNC in the women's division, but I think that, Brown having to play against a slow team that's going to have a lot of defensive schemes designed to try to take them out of what they want to do, and then a Texas team that always seems to give them tough games, like that athleticism factor. Not that I think Brown's necessarily going to lose either of those games, but I don't think they're necessarily going to be super comfortable with the matchups. Maybe it won't matter. Maybe that's how good Brown is, but I do think this is a fairly interesting Pool A as they tend to go.
I'm a little cooler on this pool. SLO is a strong team. Could they there's just fair chance that they're going to be the best 2 seed, I think. But Brown is no stranger to having people target the game plan. Like we're not. No, it's no secret what Brown's doing or who the disc is going to. You know what I mean? Like I don't think they're going to be that easily foiled by some smart scheming, and I'm worried about Texas. I usually like feel like I like tough clubs. Like I think that usually I buy in, and I still love the names on the roster. Like I still think that this is a team with a lot of talent, but I just feel like the performance level hasn't been there. I mean, maybe I'm putting too much weight on Smoky Mountain, but they had a terrible Easterns. And then they got smoked by Colorado in the regional final. So I'm a little worried that Texas is not going to be quite the team that we are used to. I would not. I think they are ripe for an upset by a 4 and 5 seed that I think actually might be kind of good. Utah State and William and Mary.
Chris Casella, player for Texas, joined us as a reporter for D3 Nationals, so I had a chance to talk to the team. I mean, keep in mind, Keith, they were brutally injured for large portions of the season, and it sounds like they are getting back to healthy. Now, it can be difficult to get up to 100%. I don't know that I think this team is going to challenge for, even maybe beyond quarters, but they lost by 1 to Brown earlier this season. So it's not like and that was
how much can we make of the wind ball results that people were playing at Smoky Mountain? Aside from that, Brown was good.
Fair enough, but if you're gonna kill them for Smoky Mountain, I think you gotta
Well, that's why I'm mostly talking about Easterns. But
fair. But I mean, at Easterns, yes, they lost some games they probably shouldn't have lost, but they played Colorado within 1. I mean, yeah, they have some baffling losses, but I think that you can chalk more of that up to injuries than anything else. Now, look, I'm not going to sit out here and try to, be a Texas a booster, but I do think that the result against Brown and the historical results against Brown point to Texas being a tougher matchup than Brown might like to see. I would be happy to wager that they still win 2 games in this pool. I think they're going to beat William and Mary. And I think they're going to beat Utah State.
We should talk because I might be able to take money on that if you yeah, I might be able to put some money on an anti-Texas fan. Sorry, Chris. But hey, if we're talking about teams that aren't healthy, they're seated behind Slow. You don't hear Slow complaining, and that team is the most injury snake bitten team I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it does seem to strike Texas a lot.
And
Texas seems to
that
have
goes
this
back
problem.
10 years.
Someone work on the training staff. We need some upgrades.
Team that was player in and a point in an actual game. They're just an apocryphal. They're like Bigfoot. Everyone's like
somebody on slow read the Latin words in the Necronomicon. Somebody was activating the curse.
Okay, so get with point to Brown.
I mean, yeah, at 0-1 when they give up the first break to Brown.
You know what I mean?
No, I don't think any final score will be within 2.
What about 3?
Yeah, I think 3. I feel like somebody could get there.
All right. So let's move on to Pool B. And Minnesota, Washington, and Washington University. So the Washington, the bottom of the. So yes, you have UW, this top 10 team, behind the mercurial Minnesota, a NC State team with a player in Trevor off at any time, deliver a very good Colorado. Underperformed at 2021 Nationals.
What are there how many players who received votes in our top 25 college players voting, how many of them are in this pool? It's a lot. And even a bunch of top 10 guys with Alex Atkins and Cole Jurek and Trevor Lynch. I mean, there's a lot of star power here. But again, a lot of inconsistency. I mean, NC State, Minnesota, Washington, all of these teams have a track record of mixed performances. So this is, to me, what I was saying about Pool A in the women's division, that's Pool B here. I think that these teams are alive to upset Colorado, but I also can see them. I don't know if I can really see them losing to WashU, but I can see them struggling in pool play. I mean, NC State, how many times have we seen this team shock you with a loss? You're like, I thought they were going to win that game, and they found a way to lose it. That's NC State, unfortunately, has made themselves known for, despite all they're a very chirpy team too, which I can appreciate. Minnesota, who feels like exactly what you're going to get from Minnesota? Do you feel like that? I mean, we've seen them get some really great wins this year. They're obviously known for being the team that
The only
upsets
team
they've
to beat
gotten.
Brown.
The only team to beat Brown. Yeah, they come within one of Colorado, and again, it's Smoky Mountain. But we've also seen them get blown out by Vermont, lose to Northeastern. Like I don't know exactly what to expect from Minnesota and Washington. I don't want to belabor the point about Washington. We know they're a great 4 seed, so this is a pretty scary pool.
Who's getting out of? Give me the teams in order.
You want me to do my picks now, huh?
No, just for the pool. Just for the pool.
Colorado, Washington, Minnesota.
I don't know if I can believe in Minnesota. I think they're going to straight up miss. I'm going to miss the whole thing. I think it's going to be Colorado, Washington, NC State.
I mean, I don't feel that strongly about it.
I mean, I just don't know if I see this Minnesota team having what it takes. It's hard to be a team that plays no defense and in the postseason. Look at the NBA playoffs right now at the end of the season, right? It's and the flashy offensive team. Minnesota, very soft line and non-existent defense. And they barely got. I mean, the region as they crushed was barely got past Carleton. They barely got past Carleton, who then to lose to Wisconsin. Minnesota team. Yes, I know they beat Brown. Yes, I know that they have in like hypothetical theory the tools to be a team that can go out and beat a great team, because that's what a great O-line can do. If your O-line is just rock solid and doesn't get broken, they're going to win the game. I don't know. I don't see it. And they're playing against tough defensive teams.
I don't understand how they don't have a better defense, because I'm like 98% sure that Cole Jurek's one of the best defenders in the division. So I don't know what the hell, why they can't get any breaks. Like, what is going on? They also, after Florida warm up, have not beaten a team in the field at nationals. They're like 0-5, and then they also got blown out by BYU. Oh no, wait, they beat Wisconsin at regionals. Sorry, they beat Wisconsin at regionals. But otherwise, their only wins against notable teams are over teams that ended up missing nationals: UMass, Carleton, UCLA. That's it.
I've been sold this Minnesota team so many times, and I'm not going to buy any more stock.
It makes me nervous because you've seen them in person enough that makes me a little shaky for me.
So let's move on to Pool C. I have some at the men's draw. UNC, Vermont, Ohio State, Wisconsin. I just think the top 2 teams in this pool are really in that order, and then it's going to be a dog for who gets the 3rd spot in pre-quarters.
I like believe in Vermont at this point. I feel like I'm probably a little biased just from watching them in person at regionals, but I was skeptical. I think they had every reason to, kind of fold in a situation they hadn't been in before, and that gives me a little belief that despite being kind of a first-time outfit in nationals, that they can deliver on the big stage. I harbor some questions about what's going to happen when they get into the quarterfinal situation or whatnot, but they gave North Carolina a pretty good run. I think they're excited to go up against them. I buy the talent. I buy the athleticism from this team. And frankly, I'm not super impressed with the teams below in the pool. So I agree with you. I feel like UNC and Vermont are in pretty secure positions, and I don't really know what's going to happen below them, except that I feel more confident about Wisconsin than Ohio State. I'll say that much.
That you feel like they outperform Ohio State.
Yeah, I feel like Wisconsin could theoretically finish 3rd in this pool, and I think Ohio State.
Wisconsin is a total wild card.
Ohio State could finish 3rd in the pool via 2-1 or 1-2 situations, like with tiebreakers. But I can't see them beating California and Wisconsin.
Let's talk about what we know about Wisconsin. Okay, this is a
is that the
program.
Whole joke? It's over. That's all we know.
Legendary team. They got the baby blues. The whole deal. They went to Easterns. They did not perform well. They lose to Ohio State. They lose to Michigan. They lose to Wilmington. They get smoked by Brown. They get 1 win over Virginia Tech. Okay? So, all right. They're a borderline nationals team. What do we learn in the regionals? They get smoked by Minnesota. I mean, they just get their doors blown off, 13-6. And then they beat a Carleton team coming off of an emotionally devastating loss when they'd had the disc to win. Okay? I don't see, sure, they could beat Ohio State. Ohio State's also a bottom seed team. These are weak teams. And I mean, Wisconsin hasn't played much. I get the benefit of the doubt as a great for the course of time, but getting Minnesota not give me a lot of confidence in this team. I really just don't. I don't see it. I mean, yes, they could get that third spot, but frankly, pool just goes to seed.
I also think Cal's decent. I think that they're the favorite to finish third. Don't get me wrong. I think it'll be an upset for UC San Diego to win some of these games and or for Wisconsin, excuse me, to lose some of these games. And they did lose to Ohio State, although it was by 1 at Eastern. So, it was a very close game. So I probably shouldn't sell Ohio State totally up the river, but I like the talent on this Wisconsin team. I do still harbor concerns about the way they played at Nationals 5 months ago. They pretty much laid an egg, got blown out by every good team they played. Only teams they beat were UC San Diego and Illinois. So not a great showing for the Hodags. So that makes me a little nervous. I'm really not buying on Ohio State. And I think that the ceiling on Wisconsin is higher.
Rick in the chat, the 29 U.S. Open freaks. That's a deep cut.
That's bold. So yes.
What are the odds that Wisconsin upsets?
Plus what, like 750?
Okay, let's move on to Pool D.
And now it's gonna happen. We just manifested.
We just spoke it into existence.
Sorry,
Pittsburgh,
Jill.
Georgia, Michigan, Auburn, and Connecticut. This is a lot of fun. Michigan is a team that has kind of like stepped up in nationals. Saw them make that great run in 2021. You have a Pittsburgh team that's looked really good this season. Georgia feels like an underseeded team at number 5 because of the middle of their season, even though they've been looking pretty much dominant otherwise. You have a fun Auburn program once again. Brett Holzmeier is going to be a problem for people. And then you have UConn. With my apologies
Jeremy
to the
Bernier,
coach
baby.
in the
If you're going
chat.
to talk about Brett Holzmeier, you can talk about Jeremy Bernier.
I like it.
I don't know exactly what to make of Michigan. During the season, I find that they usually feel like a team that beats the teams they're supposed to and loses to the teams that they're supposed to. And they kind of fulfilled that, except with regards to UNC Wilmington, who's, I don't know, has their number or something. And I get, they beat Vermont, which is a pretty solid win. Really deep team. I don't know if they have that takeover player. And it's hard to wash the taste out of your mouth of how their last Nationals run ended, even though overall it should be considered a success. I mean, this is 2 years in a row that they've showed up at Nationals and won a game they probably weren't supposed to win. So
Right.
They've got the chops at Nationals to beat somebody. But that was not a great performance the way their season ended. But those lumps can teach you a lot. I'm just not sure that I like this team on paper as much as I liked the team from the 2021 season. And they have a tough draw. Pittsburgh and Georgia look a little bit better. Although, if you want to talk about rough Nationals in 2021, you got to talk about Pittsburgh, right?
I think that was a weird. Pittsburgh is not a program that's built well to be successful in that scenario, where it's like, we're going to integrate a bunch of random people who haven't played with the team in 6 months. They didn't do well with it. This is a team that wants to build up over the course of a full season. Nick Kasmerick, coaching program, whole deal. This is this team is a title threat, in my opinion.
Pittsburgh, all right.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure that I see the depth there to do that, and I am still worried about the way that they played in 2021. I mean, come on, they had such a stacked roster and did absolutely nothing. That's a tough draw. That's a tough way to go. I
hear you, but look at this team. They went to Smoky Mountain and Easterns, and their only losses came to UNC, Brown, and consolation loss to UMass.
Yeah, and yeah, they were solid. They're good. Like a B plus at Florida warm up? Is that fair to say?
I mean, probably better than that. A minus. I don't know. Like they were clearly not as good as Brown and not as good as BYU, but they were probably the next best team there. Did I lose to UMass? I can't remember. They were supposed to play them in semis. But, look, I just think Henry Ying is going to be one of the best players of the tournament.
That I don't disagree with.
They have 2 wins. They're 2-0 against Georgia this season. That has to feel, they say it's hard to beat a team twice. Maybe it's hard to beat a team 3 times, but you have to like them in the matchup, right?
I'm not going to discount those wins. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to discount them.
You sound like you're about to discount them, Keith.
They did catch Georgia in that time when Georgia was playing abysmally, right?
They beat the Mid-Easterns too. I don't know what else you want to say.
It's true.
Sure. You can erase the Smoky Mountain one if you want.
I want to even erase it, but knock a couple points.
I think Georgia win this pool.
I think I am when it comes down to it. But it sounds to me like you're taking Pitt, which is going to make for some really interesting stuff. We're
going to have to get to our picks in a little bit.
Oh gosh.
Does Auburn or Connecticut have a course?
If Matt Kearney's listening, yes. If he's not, then no. Auburn. I don't actually. I feel like I don't really have any justification to think that they're going to upset one of the teams that are so good above them. I don't think they are get any wins at nationals or anything, but they're in a stacked pool, and that's going to make it tough. They did smash Wilmington, who's beaten Michigan. So transitive property. There's a shot.
So here's the question for you, Keith. Of the 5 seeds, Wash U, Wisconsin, Connecticut, which team has the best shot to get to pre-quarters?
I feel like I made my Wisconsin argument. I think that William and Mary also, I'm not super impressed with the teams above them because I'm not a huge believer in Texas, and I think Utah State is a little unproven. But I'm not sure that I really buy William and Mary on paper the way I buy Wisconsin. So I think it's Wisconsin. I think they have the clearest path. Even though Cal's pretty good. I think I have Cal above Texas. So maybe that should shake me. Really, ultimately, Wisconsin's got to beat Cal, or hope Ohio State can. And William and Mary might not have that tall a task. If they can get a win over Utah State, and Utah State can get a win over Texas, that could be how William and Mary gets in. Pretty close between those two. But I'm sure Joe Mama, our resident WashU fan, would love for us to stump for WashU. I'd love for him to make the case.
They have
They do have some exciting talent, but that pool is brutal.
I mean, what are you going to do? There's just
hey, we said NC State, Minnesota, and Washington are all shaky. So that's WashU's in.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they almost have to do it twice, have things break their way. I don't know.
Utah State, just for reference, went 1-5 in December. Did not really play a competitive game against any of the other teams. That's
Hard knocks, baby.
I think William and Mary got a great chance to beat Utah State. And if you think Texas is not the real deal, sure. I mean, people are wrong by getting it out. I just don't know if I see enough in their results to make me feel like they're going to have a chance.
So who are you picking? I hear you making the bear case.
Okay, so
here,
of the 4 seeds,
who are you making the bull case for?
The 4 seeds, I can't go with WashU because the pool's too tough. I think it's Wisconsin. I think it's Wisconsin. Okay. How could it not be Wisconsin? This is a team that has a lot of coaching experience, and that they're going up against or just are in pools that make it really difficult for me to see how they're going to get.
And if they're
Cal
healthy,
feels like a acceptable seed relative to the other teams, Michigan, Minnesota, and Texas.
There are good players on this team too. If they're
everybody's
healthy,
good.
they're players we've seen be successful at college nationals, like, helping drive this team. So I do think that Wisconsin could be a little bit of a sleeper.
All right.
So I'm going to take Wisconsin for that question.
There's a question I'm going to go back to from Mags. How much is about to compare how teams did in 2021 and 2022? So, like, December Nationals versus now where we are now. Of course, some of these teams didn't play in the series in the fall for various reasons. Mags asks, how much is about what they've learned in 5 months, personnel changes, or just different dice getting rolled in other factors that affect how seasons kind of play out?
Well, it's different. It differs for different teams. For teams that knew that they were going to be losing a lot of people from 2021 to 2022, I imagine that they kind of approached it as 2 different seasons, while teams that probably had a lot of carryover almost were like looking at one season in the same way a club team might look at playing in the national championships and then playing in WUCCs. Like, you're looking for that double peak, which is a really challenging thing to do, especially for college programs that have basically no experience trying to double peak. But my guess is that's kind of, you have to talk to on a team by team level to find out who was approaching this kind of like one extended season with the fall as an opportunity to improve your chances for the spring. That's, for example, when I heard that was how Wisconsin was approaching it. So, I don't really know for sure, but I do think that that's going to be something that you're going to see from teams. I mean, where you see continuity is where I think you can start to look at teams that are learning lessons. Where you're seeing that lack of continuity with big changes in personnel is where you start to think, okay, how did this team use this past 5 months to improve upon themselves from where they were in 2021?
I'm going to give you my top pool play matchups, Keith. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
First eyes immediately go to Pittsburgh, Georgia.
Of course.
I think that has the potential to be the best game in pool play. I also really like Colorado, Washington. Washington feels to me like the second best team in that pool. And then, is there like a 2-3 game that really stands out? I definitely like both the 7-11 and the 8-12 matchups. Cal Poly Slow versus Texas, NC State versus Minnesota. Keith, anything I'm missing?
I like NC State, Washington a lot.
Sure.
I'm very
Any of the
curious
matchups with Washington are going to be.
Agreed. And I'm very curious about Vermont and Cal. And then, you get the Georgia-Michigan rematch, right? You get the the drama of that. But I do agree mostly with what you're picking. I think I'd take NC State, Washington over Colorado and Washington, though.
Keith, we have yet to announce streaming schedule. So why don't we just give it right here to those who are listening live? They get
our faithful
on the. We're doing 2 games every round. Ulti will be streaming from Friday all the way through Sunday morning through the quarterfinals, and then of course ESPN will take over for the semifinals. Some great. And Keith, I don't know if you want to run down every game we're doing, or you want to pick highlights, or what you're thinking. As you've now completely blurred into oblivion because of the water bottle.
The water consumption. Well, I needed someone to hit me with the hydrate channel points. Shout out to my Twitch crew for that. Am I going to refocus here?
I don't know.
Let me pull up our streaming schedule so that I can. This is off the cuff, live radio here, folks. All right. Yeah, I don't know that we need to go over the entire thing, but
I agree.
Let's talk about some games that are mostly the games that we already highlighted as our favorite games are going to be on the stream because we get to pick them. So, it's not the number one, the only consideration or anything. But we started off NC State Washington leading in the men's division on Friday. That's one of my favorite games. So I don't remember if I'm actually going to get to watch it or if I will be on the other stream, but that's on my list. Pretty much all of those games from Pool D and Pool C in the women's division. So all those top teams. We have Carleton UBC on here. We've got Vermont and Washington. We've got Carleton and UC San Diego. We've got UC Santa Barbara and Washington. So like that whole group is going to be on live stream. So those should all be a lot of fun. And then you get Pitt and UGA. I know you highlighted that game as well.
Colorado versus Minnesota in the men's division. Good. Stanford in the women's division. You know,
All right, at this point, we're basically just reading the whole
it's
thing.
rare. It's rare that you stream a 1 seed in pool play. It's rare, but I think Stanford is an intriguing enough 2 seed matchup that it's worthwhile. I will say
it's
this:
not going to be rare anymore now that we are streaming 2 times. I mean, how many? We're also. Did you tell people that we're filming 2 more games, or hoping to?
I did not tell them that. I'm telling them 2 more games also getting filmed every round, and games will either be streamed or filmed during pool play. I think that's the first time this has ever happened. I can't be positive about that, but it hasn't been that long since we've been doing 2 and 2 streams and filmed games. And the fact is, we're planning towards a future where even more games are getting streamed. Perhaps not to the extent that we stream kind of the like top feature games, but making more games available live, potentially without a lot of bells and whistles. But that's coming down the road, and look forward to talking with everybody more about that in the future. But should be great. Can't wait for the Keith trying to get his camera back in focus. It just won't do it. It's just not enough light. Ghost Keith.
Look, what we're actually trending towards is we're actually going to paywall one of the games and then not show it to you for 2 days, and you have to wait to watch it on some obscure television channel. So that's our plan. Marquee game, you can't watch it till Wednesday or whatever.
You could also have a live crew doing a live show, but don't make it available. This is
I think I got it.
Worked.
I think
you got it. Well done. Like the fact that the AUDL game of the week is not available to watch actually live is so wild to me. So let's see. We're in the chat. So now is your time to get your question in. It doesn't matter what it is, how obscure it is. You want to hit us with a betting line. You want to hit us with biggest upset. You want to give us your picks. We're going to be getting to our picks in just a moment.
I'll go back for some questions that we may have missed.
Good.
Like,
we can start with those.
Will Auburn break seed from Rick?
Will Auburn break seed? So what is Auburn seeded? They come in as the 16. I'm going to take that question as it stands in pool play. Like, if they win some crossover game in deep consolation because they missed the bracket, that doesn't really count to me. I don't think so. I just don't think they quite have the horses to beat any of those top 3 teams in their pool. That's part of the problem with being in Pool D, because you're the 16 against the 4, 5, 9. They've got a shot. I think, against Michigan, but I slept on the Southeast more than I should have back in December. I like what I saw from Auburn at warm up, but I just don't think they quite have enough discipline to take down one of these top teams.
If they had been in Pool C or Pool A or something, like maybe I'd give them a shot. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Although, right, we've seen Auburn upset Pitt many years ago when they wasn't Pitt the number 1 overall seed or something that year. So we see crazier things, right? What team? Here's another one from Dan Young. So, what team will find an answer to Jock Nissen's blades? That throw specifically, I don't really know. I feel like everybody thinks the answer is just deny him the disc. They have this like early Mac Hecht impression, like, oh, if we can just put a lockdown handler defender on him, he's not athletic enough to get the disc. And I think that is way underselling the player that Jock Nissen has become over the past couple of years.
He's a really interesting player. Not your typical center handler, just kind of and like gets the reset. Like, he's super dynamic. That put him along with their other top players in dominant. He's going to play a ton of minutes. I think you have to get tired and hope throwing mistakes. I don't know how to beat this Brown team. That they're just it's so tough to deal with their one, and like they have too many good throwers. You can't just throw zone. Maybe if it's really windy, you could get away with that. But this proven it over and over this season that they're the real deal.
I think UNC is the team that I would look at as having. I mean, UNC's been there before. They've played against the system. they've got a really smart, well-coached team. They everybody talks about Siraj Maharaju, basically won Defensive Player of the Year in how he played against Brown in that game. So, could he pass along some tips? Maybe pass him. I think his brother's on NC State, and he's a pretty, at least at 2021 Nationals, a pretty feisty handler defender himself. I don't know if we'll get to see that matchup, but I don't know if he even gets Struckness, and he's not as tall as Siraj, but those are the things you want to look at. And maybe Slow has an answer for it. I don't know.
Will wants to know what the line is on Mary Texas.
Texas -3?
That's about right.
What's somebody
-3.5? I like 3.
Somebody had simulated lines today. Let me pull up. Maybe we'll get more followers for at Ultimate Data Sci, as in the first 3 letters of science. Let's see what their lines were for this one. Pool A. They had. These are simulated, so these aren't betting lines. William & Mary versus Texas. Texas -1.4 goals, so that's a really tight line.
I'd take Texas -1.5.
Yeah, I feel like I would take that, and I like William & Mary against Texas.
Milwaukee weather forecast is looking pretty breezy. Yeah, let's
Shocked.
actually take a look at the Milwaukee weather. So the forecast has improved. It was looking like it was going to be kind of rainy, but it looks like that's going to go away. We're seeing 10 to 13 mile per hour winds. Looks like 5 to 10-ish on Saturday. Could get windy on Sunday for quarters and particularly the semifinals, because the wind's going to pick up in the afternoon to 18 miles per hour, and then in the 12 to 15 range. So if you think about teams that really seem like fair weather teams that prefer to play games that are not involved with wind, don't count on it. It was windy during many of the games were windy. Like the finals there was some decent throwers wind, maybe a little beyond that. And for semis on Sunday night, it was quite windy. So how will teams respond to that? That always gives pause with teams like UNC that seem to always prefer to play in more still conditions because they never get any wind in Chapel Hill. That's going to be something that could help level the playing field.
I'm tired of this, Charlie. It feels like
80%
of the elite tournaments that we film, like when we go, especially nationals, are freaking windy. Club, college, just always. I'm tired of it. However, go ahead and if start smashing the buy button on that Stanford stock, because Superfly stock is going to start rising in price a lot if it's going to be windy.
And keep in mind, it generally gets windier in the afternoon, so less likely to have that be a factor. Afternoon, 3-4 o'clock games, we could cranking. Asks what top 8 seeds do not make quarters, so that they get knocked out in pre-quarters or in pool. For teams.
Man, if it feels harsh to say that UC Santa Barbara could be on that list in the women's division, but their pool does shape up in a way that kind of stinks. I also think it's very possible they win their pool. So they're not the most likely team to fulfill this prophecy, but
you got to look at the crossovers. You got to think about who are the teams going to be playing in a pre-quarter if they don't win their pool. I think if Stanford finishes second in their pool, well, then they're going to play, potentially Vermont. But I think it's UCSB, Keith. I mean, I think you're right, because I think that Washington and Vermont are both going to beat UCSB. UCSB is going to cross over with – they're going to cross over with Stanford. No, I would still take UCSB to beat Stanford, same as they have pretty much all season in a pre-quarter. Maybe Georgia, I don't like that quite as much, but I still think they're such a deeper team than Georgia. It's hard to find a team that I feel like low confidence in that top 8. I mean, the answer is probably Stanford.
What
it's
what about
probably Stanford.
UBC if they end up finishing third in Pool C? You know, they might have to cross over with Tufts
Yeah, that's true.
or Colorado. Like
If they lose to UCSD and they cross over with, sure, they could lose that game.
I mean, that's where I look at is the tough pools where teams might get pushed into the third slot and have to play a strong crossover.
On the men's side, I think NC State certainly feels susceptible given their pool.
Absolutely.
You know, is skepticism about Vermont warranted? I don't think they lose their game to Cal, but I could definitely see them losing their crossover in B.
Yeah, I mean they could play Washington, NC State, Minnesota. Like those are all good teams that I think could beat Vermont.
They're going to have a very tough pre-quarter.
As much as I hate to say it, what about slow? I mean, we just talked about Michigan has this history of beating teams that that it feels like they shouldn't, and pre-quarters is like basically the place to do it. That matchup could line up, or even worse, they could be playing Georgia or Pittsburgh.
It's I mean, it's not maybe too shocking to say that the 8 seed is the likeliest team to miss the
Not
quarters.
a long branch to climb out on.
Right. But, you're right. I mean, especially with Texas there, and like if Texas is a little underseeded because of the injuries, maybe that's, Slow isn't even the second best team in that pool. It's possible. But I really like Slow to win that game against Texas. So I think they're going to get the 2 spot. And I think that then, they have a crossover game. It's going to be a tough crossover game, regardless of what happens in Pool D. Georgia, Michigan, Auburn, Pitt, any of those teams, tough. So there you go. Let's see. Any other questions? Give us a prop bet for pool play, asks Mags. Okay. Keith is the king of this. I'm gonna leave this to Keith.
Oh man, that's tough. I mean, how deep a dive do you want? I think you want to keep it approachable for this kind of
points allowed by the 1 seeds.
Yeah,
points allowed by UN divisions.
I think points allowed by the 1 seed is going to be is in the game. I shouldn't say going to be. The game is.
Oh,
is
it's in the
live.
game.
I do think it is a tiebreaker in the game. I sometimes I like state or regional success. Like how many games will teams from the state of California win? Although I guess that pretty much is bang on Southwest right now, right? There's not any difference, right?
This tournament.
Yeah. So, something like that. Those are fun props to me.
How many? So, what's your answer to points allowed by the 1 seeds?
Points allowed by the 1 seeds. I would say the UNC women. I think they're gonna blow probably 2 teams out, and then play one game where they give up. Especially if it's windy, you got to mute this a little bit. So I would say on average, like 7, maybe. So,
that would make it 28. I go a little higher than
maybe
that. I think it's more like 34, 35. Because I think they're going to play a couple like 15, 10, 15, 11.
I think I could go up to 30 or 31. But and Brown, I pretty much think the same thing. I think I'd go up a couple points. So maybe like 34.
12. 22, 30. Yeah, it's about right. I think they're going to play close-ish games against Slow in Texas, and they're going to smash Utah State and William & Mary.
I think they'll play one close game. They'll win another by like 4 or 5, and then they'll smash.
Okay, so who allows more points, Brown men or UNC women?
Brown men or UNC women? Who allows more points? Brown.
I think I say UNC. But it's close. It's very close. All right. One more question, and then we're going to get to our picks. Is the gap between Pleiades and other teams bigger or smaller than in the fall? Love the question from Will.
I'm going to cop out for this reason. For this reason, Charlie. Ann Worth. Ann Worth has been spotted back on the field. She's playing again. She's on this roster. If Ann Worth is healthy, it's a whole new ballgame, baby. Like, even if she's at 82%, then I think is 82% Ann Worth Bridget full speed Bridget Meisner?
No.
Probably not.
No.
So yeah, maybe
82%.
it's closer, but Ann Worth is. I
I
mean,
hear you.
come on.
You can put her on the D line, and you don't even have to worry about like big chemistry issue stuff. I actually didn't even realize they had her on the roster.
Oh
That's
yeah.
exciting. Did she play at regionals? No way. We would have known.
No, I think there was a photo of her. I mean, Dan Young's is somewhere in the chat. I'm pretty sure if he's still here, he'll let us know. But there was a photo of her. Yeah, I do think she played at regionals because I think there was a photo and she tweeted
Wow.
something about being good to be back.
Wow. Wow. Look, I actually think that like yes, it's nice to pick up a player like that. Project how impactful she could be, given that she hasn't been playing with the team that much. Now, who knows? Maybe she's been at practice for 3 months. I think the gap is smaller. That's my general answer. Even with Ann Worth back. I just think that what we've seen from UNC this season has showed me that they're a little bit closer than I expected to teams coming into the year. Like I thought this team was going to be just like untouchable. And yes, they have not lost a game. It's true. But they've got some games where it's been a little close. I mean, like Northwest Challenge, they had wins over Vermont and Colorado. Like, tell me that you thought they were like 1-point games this year.
It's fair.
And yeah, and we're a nice pickup. But wind, that's a problem. They lost some key handlers, Keith. I think that it is a foregone conclusion that the team is going finals, although, well, we'll see when I get to our picks. What I
Picks
should we
are
get
gonna
to
be
him?
hard.
And yet,
I
play as points out. So Keith, it is time. It is in the women's division. I think we should just go semis and finals. And if you have some, we can do that. But I don't want to go through every single pool. It's too much.
Agreed. I also I got to think about the bracket. That, like in my head, I like to have the actual bracket so I can think about the matchups.
Yeah, you can imagine the matchups along.
And man, is it tough. Man, is it tough this year. Pool C and Pool D in the women's division are just freaking coin flips. Like, all right, who's going first? Me or you?
It's up to you. You choose who goes first.
All right, you picked the division, so I guess I'll go first here.
I'm happy to go first. If you don't feel like you're ready, I think I'm ready to go.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go first for one of the divisions, probably, right? So
It's true.
If you already know who you have, you can go ahead. But I mean, I'm taking
right,
North Carolina. That I think is a lock.
Okay.
So I think North Carolina. Pool B. I'm gonna take. Let's see if who's Colorado play in quarters if they win Pool B. They play
an AD crossover.
An AD crossover. Well, that could be a tough team.
They would get the 2A 3D.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna take North Carolina, Colorado, Washington, and who gets the other AD matchup? Pool C.
3A 2D goes to the winner of Pool C. That's right.
Oh my gosh, this is the part where I'm really not sure.
That's the tough one.
There's like 5 teams I think could be in this spot, which is crazy. UNC, Colorado, Washington, and I can't eliminate Carleton in quarters, can I?
They could get Santa Barbara.
I know.
They could get Washington.
I'm gonna take Carleton. I feel like a coward, but that's 1, 2, 3, 5 with this group feels like hard to get to, but that's what I'm gonna take.
I hate to say it.
Don't.
But those are exactly the teams that I have.
No.
Yes. Look,
failed you.
I told
Everybody.
you I was going to fade the Southwest. I'm going to do it. I don't think Santa Barbara is going to get to semis. I think Washington's the best team in Pool D. I think Carleton has proven to be a tremendous team. I and I think that let's say they get UCSB. I think they win that game. Colorado I've been high on since early. I picked them to semis like 3-4 months ago. I'm sticking with it. This team's going to semis. And look, UNC is a lock. It's an easy one for the 1 seed. It's no problem. So, sure. Could UBC get it done? Maybe. After that, I don't see any of these teams having what it takes. I don't think semis goes past the 7 seed.
I think Vermont's.
And
I think Vermont's
UBC
really
has
live.
lost twice to Washington. Like, I don't see it. I think we're going to see
Vermont
the same
and
teams.
UCSD are live, man, and they were the teams I was considering the most. If I could find a path. For them.
That's fair. I'll give you that, but I don't know if UC San Diego is deep enough to make a semis run at nationals. I love the team. I can't wait to watch them on the stream. I think they're super exciting. I think they're fun, but they're just not deep enough to go to semis. And Georgia, same thing. The teams that are reliant on one player like that, I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. So I'm taking Washington. Keith, who you got the finals?
Well, I'll go ahead and take my UNC. That's easy enough.
Is it so easy to take over Washington?
I guess Washington is that is tough.
I mean,
But no,
UNC blew their doors off.
Yeah, I'm
in the
taking
final.
UNC. I'm not going to question this. I'm taking UNC.
I'm just trying to raise doubt in your mind.
Yeah, and then I'm going to take Carleton because I can't get all the way there with Colorado.
I'm taking
So
UNC
finally
over
get
Washington.
UNC Carleton. Somebody so long awaited.
I'm taking UNC over Washington, much closer, like 15-11, 15-12. This is the big one. Colorado Carleton. Where do you go? What do you do? They've played once. Colorado got the win. They played once or check. I think they just played the win at Northwest Challenge. And look, it was out. That's not gonna like that. That's a weird aberration. The team that's supposed to be to play UNC in the final. But you know what, Keith? Against my better judgment,
Yes, do it.
this Colorado team path. I think they're finally that program. They are. I think what they could be. I tell myself every year. The results. You have to ignore the results and to talk yourself into, it didn't mean that much, or blah blah blah. But when we saw Colorado at full strength at Northwest Challenge with Stacy Gaskill playing, they kicked everyone's ass except UNC, who they played twice, and the second time in what was essentially, I think it was the final, right? 15-14, grinder of a game, could have gone either way, coin flip. Tell me why that's not the rematch in the national final. I think it is. I think it's destined. I understand you want to see the Carleton-UNC matchup. Carleton getting crushed at Northwest Challenge is a major red flag for me. And it's easy to talk yourself into the narrative of Colorado and ignore the results. And I'm going to take Quandary to make the final rematch of the Northwest Challenge final in the game. Keith, who you taking in your hypothetical UNC Carleton match?
Did anybody else just hear Charlie start that Colorado pick with, UNC blew them out. That's not going to happen again. And then later say, don't ignore the results. Did anybody else just hear that, or was it just me? That's what I thought I heard. But so just throw that out
I'm
there.
not saying Colorado's going to blow Carleton out again. I think it's going to be a close game.
No, I'm just anyway. Honestly, Charlie, I'm not going to say I'm having second thoughts, but I do think that this UNC team is a little more fallible. Now
They're
the more I look
fallible.
at it, and Anworth is to me the missing piece because I feel like they're a little more dependent on their best players than they were in 2021. I feel like the depth pieces are a little unseasoned on this team, and that's something that I do think is a concern. But I'm still taking them to win this game. Honestly, to me, I think UNC and Washington are the two best teams. I think if UNC can win that semifinal against Washington, they're going to be in a great spot. I do think Carleton and Colorado and honestly like 4 other teams are probably good enough to beat UNC. Like I think it's close. The pack is close enough. So I think I may have overstated the case earlier with like UNC just walking, but I think they're it's the power of the 1 seed. You get a great draw that way. I'm still going to take them to win this game. I still think they're the best team. If I had Washington in the other semi, I would have had them in this final, and I might even consider them. But I'm going to take UNC.
I want to talk myself into Colorado.
You should do it. You should.
I want to have the stones to take Colorado to win the national championship. I just don't. I just don't. I don't think I can do it. I just don't think they can beat UNC in this spot. I think it helps that it's going to be windy potentially. I think that's legitimately use. And remember, this game happens at 5:30 in the afternoon. Weird. I think weirdness benefits an underdog team. How will UNC handle the spot? The thing is, it's a classic situation. Okay, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be the same thing we saw in the fall. We're going to see Colorado beat Carleton, this incredibly emotional game. You get to the finals. Oh my gosh, the finals, and then they're going to get rolled over by UNC. And it's not that I don't think that they can be a great team. In fact, like my way too early prediction is that Colorado's got to. Am I really willing to say they're going to win the title next year? I don't know. You know what? Sure, I'll say it. Colorado's going to win the title. But they're not going to do it in 2022 because you got to get there first before you can take that next step. And UNC's been there. They've done that. Yes, there's going to be pressure on UNC. I think they could lose in semifinals. They are not. When we came into the year, I was like, this team is an all-time legend team. Thought that they had 2 of the best players in the division coming back, playing with the team the whole time. Instead, one of those players never materialized, and Anworth is back after injury. I'm to say that she's going to be the difference maker that like carries them to just like total crushing of everybody. But at the end of the day, they have the benefits of being the 1 seed. They're going to get an easy quarterfinal. I think that they're going to win their semifinal because I think it's a good for them against Washington. And I think Colorado because Colorado hasn't been there before. So that's a long way of saying I'm taking the chalk. I'm taking Pleiades. They haven't lost a game here. But I won't be sure knocks them off.
It's wild to think about the fact that these teams are not even their final form, so to speak. I mean, your UNC could have had Karen Earhart. Colorado could have 2 more outstanding players that have been lost to ACL injuries. Like, I mean, I've been a stand for Bailey Shigley on this program before, and then adding Sky Fernandez. Like, these are teams that are incomplete and they're still this good. So just worthy of note. But I am shocked that we ended up at the same picks, more or less. Like, obviously the Colorado Carleton thing differs, but I'm pretty surprised because I can see a lot of alternative paths available, and you may too. Like, it may not be descriptive of the fact of like, do we think that these teams are like really likely to achieve this?
Yeah, I mean, I just think like our data this has a fall now, which makes me actually have conviction than typically I do. Colorado feels like that, but we know Washington and UNC good, and yes, the teams have changed somewhat. Also have the full season of spring data. Now, I don't know. I actually feel division than I do the men's. Maybe selling the Southwest teams. That's if I'm going to go wrong, it's going to be because maybe you CSD or Davis or Stanford, multiple of those teams throwing wrenches. Could happen. And the wind is an interesting factor. But let's go to the men's division. I'll start here with my semis picks. I'm taking Brown.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great situation. Now, who will they get? They will get the 3C crossover. So that's like Cal would be chalk. It could be Minnesota, could be Washington. I don't know. Whoever they get, I just don't see them losing in quarters. I think Colorado is going to have a bounce back tournament here after a really disappointing 2021 championship. They're going to have learned from that, and they've really shown that they're an elite team this whole season. They have the one loss by 1 point to Brown. That's it. And they, have just mostly crushed teams along the way. Just really like the team. I thought they were going to do better in 2021. I think that they're going to be there this year. UNC. So they're going to get the two. What are they going to get? 1C plays 2D, 3A. 2D, 3A. So that could be like Georgia or Pittsburgh probably would be my guess. I am not sold on this dark side team.
Interesting.
Do I think that Georgia or Pitt could beat them? I think it's possible. The wind makes it interesting. Do either of those teams have the depth to beat UNC? Oh, God. This is tough. I just think Tim Searles-Bose is going to do enough. I'm taking UNC in a very tight game, and really the question for me, who is going to win Pool D? That is the key question to ask. If whoever wins it, I think gets to semis. Let's see who plays the 1D team. It's 2C, 3B. 2C, that could be Vermont. 3B, maybe Minnesota. Gosh, this one in the women's division. Do I think that's for Vermont? Could they do it? I'm a Pittsburgh. I'm going to take the top 4 seeds. And I really like Georgia, but I think Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's legit.
Legitsburg.
There, Keith is real.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you got Henry Ing, Miles Cooper. There's definitely some strong defenders on that team, and they got a little dog in them.
Pittsburgh, they got that dog in them,
which is like not always what I think of Pittsburgh.
It's been for this team. I'm sorry I dragged those picks out for so long. Very tough.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
For taking the top 4 seeds, but I think that UNC is very susceptible to losing in quarters this year.
Well, Charlie, that I'm wrestling with mostly the same problems. I've got Brown, Colorado, and UNC all winning their pools. Although I toyed with Washington winning Pool B. And then, it comes down to Pool D. And it comes down to that 4-5 to me, Georgia and Pitt. And I think, I mean, I've gone back and forth. I think I can. I think if Georgia doesn't win the pool, I kind of like them against UNC in quarters.
Yes. Yes.
But
Exactly.
if they do win the pool, I don't really like Pittsburgh against UNC. I think I'm going to take Georgia to win the pool, and so I'm going to take those 4 teams to semifinals.
The 1, 2, 3, 5. Same as in the women's
Yeah,
division.
I think that's where I'm going to land here.
Wow. So we both. How deep does the semifinalist conversation go in the men's division? Let's exclude Washington from the conversation because if you want to say they're a semis potential team, sure, but like that's because of a weird seeding thing.
How many teams could I really see making semifinals? Uh, Man, can I write off Michigan? I feel like I can't. Like,
I'm writing off Michigan.
I guess Brown. So Brown, Colorado, UNC, Pitt, Georgia,
Is that it?
Washington, and SLO. I think those are the teams I think could make semis. I think Vermont and NC State are talented enough to make semifinals. I gotta see
I can't
NC
pick
State.
a team
I
that's
gotta
never
see.
been
Yeah, I
legitimate
gotta
at
see NC State
nationals.
do it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need some proof for both of them.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think the talent level is there.
All right, let's get to our finals picks. So my matchups are going to obviously be Brown, Pittsburgh, and Colorado, UNC. Pittsburgh makes a great run. They just can't hang with you. They can't hang with Brown. They just can't hang with Brown. Watched it happen. Watched it play out at warm up. They don't have it. They're good. I don't think they have an answer for Brown's offense. I think Brown's defense is disruptive enough that they're going to convert the breaks, and it's going to be like a 15-11 game that's never really in doubt. So I'm taking Brown to the final. And then we have this Colorado UNC game, which to me is the big question mark. UNC took care of Colorado. That was a different team. I like Colorado here. I like Colorado here. And it's interesting that I say that because I think like when I was sort of just like generally thinking about it before I was looking at the matchups and thinking more closely about the pools and the situation, I was like, oh, I think UNC could win. But the more I think about it, the team has played this season, the more I think about the fact that it's windy, that they're missing, it just feels like they're missing a piece or two. They're too reliable players who are just sort of closer to like average level start elite players, as opposed to being that next tier, like an LSB type. Could Liam Searles-Bowes pull it off and like put the back? Sure. But I think Colorado is just a deeper team, top end talent. And I think it's going to end and they're going to get to a final. And get the top 2 seeds facing off once again. So I've got Brown and Colorado.
I got the same thing.
Wow. 2 in these picks.
Yeah, it's not. Maybe we spend too much time talking to each other, man. I'm like really considering Georgia over Brown. Like really thinking about it, but just like Brown team's a freaking machine, man. It's just all comers. Everybody knows what they're gonna get. They go out there, they're like, all right, we've strategized, we know the game plan, and Brown goes out and does their thing anyway. I do feel like UNC's the best foil to them. I feel like UNC's got the best like understanding of the Brown system. But I don't see UNC getting that shot. I think I take Colorado to beat a UNC team that LSB is electrifying, but I just don't buy the supporting cast of this UNC team in the way I have in past years. I do think I think we're gonna get
saw in the fall.
Yeah, I think we're gonna big tournament from Ben Dameron, but like we're used to this team like the 6th best player on this team is like an elite club level player. That's just not the case now,
Nope.
So yeah, this is a good college team, and I think Colorado might be a better college team. So I'm going to take Colorado to win this one.
All right, Keith. So we got Brown versus Colorado. rematch from Smoky Mountain. I have been a little bit skeptical of this Brown team all season.
Oh my gosh.
And, all the way back to when I watched them play at warm up, and look, they've been incredibly impressive. I mean, what more is to say? I mean, more or less had an undefeated season. I know they lost to Minnesota, but whatever. I can't remember exactly when Randolph went out with the injury, but I think it was in that game. And it was game one of the season. I don't think any all that meaningful. Brown has then continued on to play the past toughest tests and prove again. They've obviously also won it in 2019. Some of the players from that team are still on this team. They know what it takes. They were tough to fall. I just think that acceptable to a dogged defensive team like Colorado that I think has superior depth to Brown. And I just don't know that I believe Brown can go all the way through the bracket, pool play, bracket, 4 nationals, and maintain the energy necessary with their offensive system to continue against the toughest teams on the toughest tests. Like you say, you're thinking about Georgia over Brown. I don't think that's crazy. Brown runs a tighter rotation than a lot of teams. They have some fantastic players, no doubt. They have a system that I think is well built to work great. Have a Mac Hecht this time around. Mac Hecht was the player he was the best thrower at the tournament. He was unbelievable. Do you really believe Jacques Nissen is that guy? Do you deep in your heart believe that he is that guy? He's good. He's really good. He's a great player. I'm picking this team to make the finals. But I don't believe that he's that guy. I think Colorado they learned from what happened in the fall. They're super deep. Player that's quite at the top tier level. And again, he could be the X factor.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're over here talking about Jacques Nissen. If only they had the number one ranked player in college. If only.
I understand, but having a great thrower like Randolph was unbelievable when they won in 2019. Was it semis or something? But the reason that they won the tournament was Mac Hecht.
Sure,
the guy was throwing darts from 65 yards. Pucks. I think that they're a great team. I just don't think that they have enough in the tank at the end of this road, to get past a deep team in Colorado. And I'm taking Mom to get back for the first time. Gosh, who knows how long? It's been a long the national championship.
I'm sure chat will provide. I'm a little surprised. I was trying to talk myself into taking Colorado. I do think we're going to get a great game from this final, but I got to take Brown. You're questioning Nissen's bona fides as a handler when we've seen him be very successful in windy conditions, but also who is the thrower who's carrying these other teams past Brown? I mean, this guy has arguably been the most impactful player in the division this season. Basically a pure handler. And I'm struggling to think of who would I rather have in the entire men's division picking up the disc in a big game where I needed a thrower. You know what I mean? There isn't a better replacement for him necessarily. I don't know if it's Alex Atkins. I don't know if it's LSB. I don't know if it's Taden Austin Nab. I don't know if it's who else were we talking about? Whoever you want to name. There's Henry Ing. are any of those guys like clearly better throwers than Jock Nissen? I just don't know if I see that. So I see a team right
I don't
here.
even have to argue. I don't feel that I need to argue with you that there's a better option for Brown at that position.
But like,
Jock Nissen's a
if the
great
argument
player.
is Brown doesn't have a good enough handler, who does?
But the way that Brown plays is predicated on extremely high difficulty throws in isolation situations where you have every time. And they've done it all. I got to give them credit. Not every team runs that is demanding as much of their top 3 players on the field as Browns. And I just don't think that Jock Nissen is Mac Hecht. I think Mac has proven not only at college, but now at the club level that he can be that guy. I don't think Jock Nissen, and that's not to say that he's not a great player. I'm not sitting here trying to
I agree.
about Jock.
You could say he's not
the
going to win the
offensive
title,
structure is so demanding. Top level guys, I don't know that it can work for 4.
Right.
And if it's going to be windy, you're going to need to have that like accuracy be there the entire time. I'm not sure that I can't step into that role. I don't think he's that guy.
Here's the counterpoint for that they have a system that's really demanding. I agree, but they could not be in a better position to be that team. They're going to be in a pool where we think they're going to be able to blow teams out. If it's windy, they're going to do what they've always done, which is send out that D2 line with one of the guys, with either John Randolph or Jock Nissen out there with them. And they're going to get a bunch of breaks that way while everybody else rests. They're going to be in the power position as the 1 seed. And they are strong in the wind because they do this well. I'm not sure I've ever seen a team that like toes the line between how to like sub your lines better than this Brown team does. Like this coaching staff has that down to a science, it feels like. So I feel like that's actually going to play into their hand because they're so good at getting this grind team out there that just like basically eats up innings while the other dudes rest so that they can do the demanding thing. And I think that this is a team that's so well practiced in carrying this load that they're going to be prepared to do the heavy lifting down the line. This is a team to me that has
day one. It hasn't been.
This is a team with 2 clear top 10 players with like 2 or 3 high level. If you even want to call it, like, do you call Dylan Villeneuve a role player? Like kind of, but like if
only because
he's
he
one of
plays
the
a
best
particular role
at doing his role.
Yes.
And they have a great system. Like all of that is championship material to me. Also, can I get excited about the prospect of watching all of the length of Dylan Villeneuve go against all of the length of Alex Atkins? Like that is a lot of gangle in one matchup. It's a Spider-Man meme situation. I'm happy to see those two go up against each other, but I gotta take Brown. I mean, just the whole recipe is there for me.
I hear you. I think they're a great team, but I've been saying it all season, and I'm standing by it. I don't know that the system there for them through that. Now, concede point, it's a great point. They concede in games where they don't even have to play their top guys that much because the D line is going to be getting so many breaks. But I still think it's going to be demanding. You got to take over for me for a second.
I get it. I think this is a talented field. This is an exciting Nationals. I mean, there does not feel like Brown. I think probably feels like a. Who do you think is a bigger favorite, Brown or UNC? Obviously, I guess I shouldn't even ask. You just said UNC women's winning and Brown not, but to the public in the public market, who's a bigger favorite to win the title?
I still think it's UNC women.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got but even then, we think that they're fallible. Like, I think this is a pretty exciting field on both sides. And I don't feel like, I know you feel like we have more information so we can draw on better, certainly better than we could in 2021 where we had no regular season and we weren't even sure who the hell was going to be playing on these teams. 2021 was chaos as far as like trying to make a plan. But for all the years that we've been doing this, like, it doesn't always feel this wide open.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a tremendous tournament regardless of who wins. I think, if Colorado play, if their game at Smoky Mountain is any indication, it's going to be an incredible battle. The Mama Bird, defense had a chance to win the game, and they lost on Universe. I mean, look, I think it could go down there. But I just want to reiterate, I think that the depth of Colorado is the difference maker. I'm not even skeptical of anything about Brown, really. I think that they run the system that they do extremely well. John Randolph's unbelievable. If you want a reason to pick Brown, I think it's actually pretty simple. I think you say, well, John Randolph's going to be and that's going to be the reason they win. And that's a pretty good reason. That's a reason a lot of teams win the national championship, because they have the best player in the game. But Alex, he's got a chance to beat in a one-game situation. And they have. I think it's going to be a tremendous matchup. I think that the system of Brown is going to require too much. It requires too much finesse at the end of a long tournament in order for them to get past what I believe is a deeper team. And that's why I'm taking Colorado. So we have a major point of disagreement, even though our semis are very close, Keith.
We have one in each division where it's we have some conviction behind it. All right, we're at the incredible 2-hour mark. Now it really is like a live nationals show, and we still have to do our game picks.
Oh, I think we're going to do our game picks for subscribers.
Okay.
So if you are hashtag the game picks, you're going to have to bounce over into our subscriber only segment out the back, as we've now dubbed it, and we will look forward to seeing you over there. You can become a subscriber for less than $1 a month at ultiworld.com/. Want to thank you so much for everybody for tuning on this live show. You know it's live because I'm having a coughing fit that makes the show. Everybody's continued support. Can't wait for the tournament. It begins Friday. Wall-to-wall coverage coming on ultiworld.com with our on-the-ground team. Live streams per round, filmed games. We're going to try to turn around as many filmed games as we possibly can during the games. So we're capable of. We have an on-the-ground editor who's going to be solely focused on editing those games, getting them turned around. So thanks so much for tuning in. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you this weekend in one college championships.